right. I think you have us on the right path here, Waylon. As far as distractions, you got to look what one hand is doing while the other hand is doing the other thing, trying to holler at you. So I think let's look up those dates. The Burisma interview, or the Burisma investigation goes back pretty far with Rudy Giuliani calling them a crooks. What? At least back to 19 or early 18, wasn't it? So
yeah, it's been a year and a half since they first started looking at it. But it seems like at the beginning of this year, they started putting it back in the spotlight. Because the Durham report was starting to come to that was getting some headway. It was making progress. It wasn't going to be too long till they started releasing information out of the Durham report. Seems like that was around the same time.
I learned from a really good investigator out in California who's digging really deep into a murder case that's happening, that happened in 1988 there in Scottsbluff County. One of the investigators that's actually working closely with the Innocence Project out in California is a guy that told me, he said, if you want to truly prove a case, either corruption in a case or something fishy about a case, or if you really want to prove a case, you must have the timeline down. If you don't have the timeline, then you can't have a foundation to go from the, because if something happens before the other thing, it changes the whole meaning. So getting that timeline down, I think, would be good for all of us to try to figure out, what was happening that day, the day before, and then boom, this other thing happened to keep us from that. And there's a lot of good theories out there as to what the distractions have been, but it's been a total barrage of one thing after another, and they always have a backup plan and something on the table that they're going to unleash, it seems like.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of the plan, is the total barrage all of the time. And this is, think about the last 3 years and just how much has happened. And it's nonstop. And maybe that's part of the strategy, because if there's so much thrown at us, like I said, I can't remember exact dates and stuff. I would have to go back through old notebooks and stuff to find them.
Who's the Batman dude?
There's so many of them.
Talk about timelines.
Well, Andy's bringing up a case. I'm not sure. I know she wants to... Oh, I know what she's talking about. The timeline case. Oh, was that...
What was his
No,
name?
that was...
What was the guy's name?
Oh, yes, Holmes. Do you remember
Yes.
Holmes? Remember, is it David Holmes? The killer in the Batman, in the Aurora, Colorado Batman Theater movie?
Oh, yeah.
Holmes, right?
Wasn't he the one that...
Okay, so this kid, I don't know if you know this about him, but he actually, just a couple of years prior to that, was, I can't remember exactly what age he was, but I'm just going to say a couple of years prior to that, he was a senior in high school and was giving a presentation for a physics experiment, physics or sociology experiment, and he was on stage at some college presenting to a bunch of seniors who were going to possibly go to that college, and he was letting everybody know about his work with this guy. And I'm going to have to give you the name of what the guy's name was, but he goes way deep into the deep state, but I'll tell you. So this guy David is really, really smart kid, the supposed Batman killer. He gave a presentation, you can look this up on YouTube, about time lapses and how it affects people's memory when it comes to reciting facts in a case, like a witness. He said, this is really good because I want to play this for you, so I'll probably have this in one of the reports, one of the podcasts. But this is a total display of how he gives you this example. He says, what we did was we worked with a computer, and this is, remember, this is years ago, because when was the Batman thing? Yeah, it was still quite a few years ago. And he said,
Yeah, it was a while back.
and we used a computer, and he says, imagine this. He says, we put an image on the screen, and then we change the image, and we tell you, press a key. So you press a key when you see a new image. And what they did was they would have you do that for a few key presses, change the image, you press a key. And then it would start slowing down just a little bit each time. It would just be a millisecond or two slower in between when you hit the key and the next one came up, and when, you know, boom, boom, it just slowed down a little bit. And then, of course, they asked you to remember the images that you saw, and in the order that you saw them in. And they did that, and then in about, 50% of the way through the experiment, they put it back to real time, to when it was normal speed, to where the images were, and of course that's going to seem to a person that, wow, my computer just sped up, wow. Because that's what happens to us. If you think about it, we get a computer and it's so fast when we buy it, and then boy, after not even 6 months, it's running so slow. But if we do a full Windows wipe, everything, if we fully wipe it, it's like running so fast, we're like, dang, that's fast. It's because it starts over. Well, is that perception? According to David Holmes, he says it is. He says, what happens when you distort the time in between events and show people images on the screen, they have an absolute inability to get it right. It distorts the facts. You can't get the order right. You can't remember what the images are. Everybody has a different story. And it makes, if he says, for instance, it makes a witness not credible anymore. He's like, oh, really? Wow, that's interesting. So whatever the authority says happened, that's what happens. Doesn't matter what the witness said. So that just discredited witnesses because they're saying they didn't get the facts right. Because the other thing that you do is you put out snippets of the news that are incorrect and then fail to correct them right away. So for instance, in the Sandy Hook shooter, how many shooters were there? Remember, everybody remembers how many shooters were there?
2.
There, everybody knows there were 2, right? Oh no, the one ran into the woods. Oh, so there was only one shooter. So the whole story was one shooter. So many of you may know the story that there was only one shooter, and the little boy, and Adam Lanza, and he's dead in the school, right? Right? He's only one shooter, right? Why was his car shot up? That'd be a good question. Who was shooting back? So anyway, there are a lot of ifs about that, but I saw video of the man, the second person, running into the woods and getting into the backseat of a car, of a sedan. But they reported that only for a moment on CNN, and then all of a sudden that was gone, and so they changed the fact that no, there wasn't 2 shooters, that was just a mistake, somebody witnessed that, and it wasn't even wrong place, wrong time, had nothing to do with it. BS. I saw the video, I saw him running from the back of a school, getting into that vehicle. So a lot of weird things happened with witnesses, and since then, this guy, after that, was then accused of a major, major crime. But here's the catch. Some people tell me that he's living in a place bigger than any of our houses. That his prison cell is way detached from anybody else, and he's living really a nice lifestyle. He's in a special confines, special protection because of what he did. Now, why would another inmate in that facility report that to somebody if it weren't true? I mean, well, I'm jealous. He gets a bigger cell than me. What the heck? Cells are supposed to be a cell, right?
Right.
This guy has his own everything.
His own wing.
Yes, everything. His own servants, his own time when he can get in and out. It's all separate from the main prison. Check it out, fact checkers. Find out if that's true. David Holmes, Batman killer in Aurora, Colorado. I think it was 2013 maybe. But that's why I think that, now if you look up that experiment that he did, and I didn't explain it well enough for you to get the picture, but the idea of that computer slowing down and then all of a sudden things are fast again, it just absolutely reverses your brain and lets you think things happen in a different order and you invent facts. And I'll run the experiment on you sometime.
So it's just a,
Yeah, but is that true? Okay, you're talking about a fairly mundane experiment. I mean,
It wasn't.
it's not a traumatic event.
right, but they are now using
Is that
it.
going to apply to traumatic events, you know, as well as these mundane sort of, okay, I've seen this person at this time, or I've seen this car at this time, or whatever.
More so, I think.
I mean, if the event is traumatic, aren't you going to be more likely to remember it fully and clearly?
No, we're both shaking our heads here.
I don't know.
I think it's opposite of that. In a traumatic experience, you absolutely have other interests in mind than recording everything perfectly. I mean, you know, unless you're a reporter or an investigator that you're digging for something, unless you are, when something traumatic happens, our brain takes over into survival mode, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah. I don't
from
know.
there, I don't know.
I can't speak to it actually unless I'm in that situation. So I wouldn't know for sure what I would do, but I can't imagine me thinking too clearly.
I have
But I
heard
don't know. I'm
amazing stories.
not a psychiatrist. It just seems to me like passing somebody on the street, you might have a flawed memory of that, but witnessing somebody get stabbed, you might remember that a little bit clearer.
Yeah, no, your point is well taken. And the experiment itself wasn't that mundane. It was pretty detailed, and I think you would get the point. Like I said, I didn't explain it very well, so I'll post a link to it. And the interesting thing is not necessarily the experiment and what he has set forth, but I mean, he absolutely just his thesis was this. Originally, people thought that you could not control how they remembered an event by anything you did. You can't control that. What he proved is that you can.
Oh, the cops do it all the time.
Yeah.
That's true.
The cops do it all the time. It's what I don't know. Have you ever been interrogated by a cop? Like not interviewed, not pulled over, and had a roadside conversation, but taken down to the police station, put under the lamps, and interrogated?
Go ahead and answer that first, Matt.
No,
They
I
lead
haven't.
you.
Okay.
Like when they ask a
Andrew?
question, they don't say, "Did you see a guy in a jacket?" And you say, "Yeah," and they say, "Well, what color is the jacket?" And you say, "Green." What they do is they say, "Did you see a guy in a blue jacket?"
Right.
So they lead you like that.
Yeah.
And then they get you to try to lie on purpose in a trivial fact so that they can turn it around and then put more pressure on you. Yeah, I actually went through a CID investigation, which is the Army's equivalent of the FBI. So I am familiar with their tactics. That was going to be in my book. We'll have to talk about that later, or just you'll have to buy it. That's one of my good ones. I mean, it wasn't good, you know, but yeah. I mean, I wasn't the criminal, but I usually am somehow around these people. So, anyway.
Yeah, the point is that kind of manipulation of memory, I mean, that's been going on for a long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. But so with this experiment, that he was claiming that until now, until that point, there wasn't really a way to get people to mix up the order of events, which then kind of disqualifies people. Then you can discredit them. Because if you can't even get the order right, even if you see the right things, and this was right before the whole Boston Marathon thing happened. You know, it was right the same year, I believe. Right before that, it was because what was maybe 2010 or 11 or 12 was the Batman shooting, and 2013 was,
Oh yeah, and
Sandy
the
Hook,
traveling witnesses.
right, because they're all connected. You know, the witnesses that we've seen testimonies from all three events, they're all the same witness. Yeah.
Oh, hey, yeah.
Yeah, that lady. Yeah, a couple of those. Yeah.
And that's a good acting job right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll just say
actors,
the same
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, so anyway, a lot of manipulation going on, but when they were able to figure out that you could discredit the real witnesses by easily manipulating the order of events, by putting out bad information and then telling people different things at different times, you know, if you listen and watch the news and the timeline of a traumatic event, they will report it wrong on purpose. That's one of my red flags. If one of my red flags says, if you get a report on the news and they instantly say